Dzień dobry, and welcome to another episode of Brit and Poland. This week, I'm in Radom. So, a lot of people will probably ask, why? Why have you gone to Radom? And to be honest, it was pure curiosity. After hearing so many jokes, seeing so many memes, whether it be about the general kind of poverty that used to be in this city, or the airport that had a few passengers a day, I wanted to see for myself. And, well, hopefully by the end of this video you'll determine what Radom is really like. I tried to organize a trip here a few months back, and only one person showed up, which goes to show the reputation kind of put a lot of people off. But I refuse to bow down. And there is a bit of history here. It was a bit of an industrial center. It was, there's something to do with it being the area where kings were. And there was a massive workers' uprising during the Russian occupation. So yeah, there's that. And there are a few monuments and things to explore as well. So please join me on my journey and I'll show you just what there is to see in Radom.
Dzień dobry and welcome to A Brit in Poland. With this channel, I travel across the country, I bring you the culture, and I show you just how amazing Poland is. So I invite you on my journey. If you want to see more, I have Facebook and Instagram profiles, which you will find links to in the description below. And if you want to really help out, you can turn to my Patreon or Patronite accounts, again in the description. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Do zobaczenia.
So Radom is 100 kilometers south of Warsaw with a population of about 210,000. So it's actually the second largest city in the Mazovia Voivodeship. And so I thought it was really worth exploring properly. We will start with a few memes to kind of celebrate the comedy that surrounds this city. I think most Polish people will look at these and find them quite apt. There was a certain video of some giveaway of drink and some lady grabbed them all off the table or something. Apparently the people of Radom find this stuff funny as well and have embraced the meme culture, but in case you haven't, I apologize in advance. I just wanted to include these to set the scene of what Poland is saying about Radom. So let's jump into the city itself, shall we? So I'm going to start with the history. So Radom sits at the crossroads of Mazovia and Lesser Poland, and its history reaches back to the early Middle Ages. The first stronghold stood here in the 9th to 10th century on a bend of the Mleczna River. In time, this wooden fortress was replaced by a new town on the other side of the river, laid out in the 14th century under King Casimir the Great. He surrounded it with walls and gave it Magdeburg rights, setting Radom on the path to becoming a royal stronghold. During the Jagiellonian dynasty, Radom rose to national importance. Kings often visited, and the city became a favoured site for royal courts, diets, and Sejm sessions. And it's one of the most famous moments came in 1505 when the Nihil Novi Act was passed here, a law declaring that nothing new could be decided without the consent of the nobility. It was a milestone in Poland's parliamentary traditions, earning Radom a permanent place in the story of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Radom's royal castle, built by Casimir the Great, served as both residence and seat of government during these sessions, while the city's churches and town hall reflected its growing status. But as Warsaw rose to prominence in the 16th century, Radom's star faded. the Swedish deluge in the 17th century, fires and economic setbacks left the town weakened, and by the 18th century it was more of a provincial outpost than a royal stage. Now this is the first church we're going to look at, which is the Bernstein Monastery, and this was built in the 15th century and is one of the best Gothic monuments in the city, supported by King Kazimierz Jagiellonczyk after a victory in the 13 Years' War. The complex also served defensive roles during invasions, and today it's a striking red brick landmark with a powerful historic aura. And we're just going to go down the street here and try not to jump into back into the history yet, because we're going to spend a bit of time, but I am going to show you some of the architecture that you can see in Radom. Yeah, this is all pretty much following the one street more or less, and as you can see there are a lot of monuments dotted throughout this city, and I think I captured most of them. Yeah, this is another church, though maybe not as impressive as some of the other ones, but still holy. This is a pair of boots. I'm pretty sure that's the whole statue. I don't think the rest was stolen. And you can see a bit of the old architecture there. And this is the thing, like Radom gets this really bad reputation, but it has some really nice spots and quite a few churches dotted around. And I'm going to focus on the more significant ones. So St. John the Baptist, this is the oldest church in Radom, dating back to the 14th century. Built by King Casimir the Great when he founded the new town. And it was the parish church of the royal castle. Kings and nobles worshipped here during Seims, and today it's one of the key reminders of medieval Radom. So, yeah, those are two of the main churches that you'll see in the centre. Now, we're going to... I'm just going to call it Museum Square because this is what it feels like to me. Yes, you have this statue of a soldier and two significant museums and one sort of smaller museum. So while this is, I think, more of the regional museum, and you have a lot of artwork in here and a bit of natural history. But let's go back to the history lesson while we're looking at the content of the museum, shall we? So, yes, so it became a provincial outpost in the 18th century, and with the partitions of Poland, Radom fell under Austrian rule, and then Russian. In the 19th century, it became an administrative hub of the Russian-controlled Congress Kingdom. The Russians left a clear mark: barracks, government buildings, Orthodox churches. Radom's people, however, often resisted. It was a centre for conspiracies during the January uprising of 1863, and many locals paid a high price for their patriotism, as is seen all over Poland, sadly. Oh, capybara. I had to include capybara. Everyone loves capybaras. Okay, so the 20th century brought further trials. Radom was heavily damaged during both world wars. And during the Nazi occupation, the city's large Jewish community, once nearly a third of the population, was forced into a ghetto and later annihilated in Treblinka. And I have a video on Treblinka you can reference. After the war, Radom was rebuilt, and in communist times it became known as an industrial centre. Yet it is the protests of June 1976 that most define its modern memory, when workers rose against price hikes, sparking a brutal crackdown. Those protests became a turning point, sowing the seeds of the solidarity movement that would help to bring down communism a decade later. And before I finish the history, I just want to highlight that the museums were actually very impressive for me. I've been to a lot of museums in Poland, and these ones were not only, with a lot of artifacts, a lot of, good, exhibits, but they both felt very modern, and actually, I think they were free. We went there on the Saturday, and I was surprised. Like, if you're going to have a free day, do you want to make it Saturday? But I was really impressed. I felt that a lot of strong effort, a lot of money went into these museums. So if you are in Radom, I really recommend visiting both of them because you learn a lot, and at the same time you have quite an immersive experience, especially like the VR headsets that you have in the History Museum. That was cool because you get like a nice view of how the old castle looked. And there was another one which told you a lot about some objects in a room that was pretty cool. But yes, so this, what we're getting to now is kind of sort of the site of the old castle, and you can have a little look of what it looked like back in the day. These days you don't really have much left, a few old walls, and I think this is quite an old building. But yeah, it's a shame when these old castles don't survive, but never mind. But yes, today Radom carries all of these layers. Its medieval town plan and Gothic churches still echo its royal past. Russian-era buildings recall the partitions, and monuments to the 1976 mark the courage of its workers. Though it is sometimes the butt of jokes in Poland, Radom remains a city where much of the nation's history, medieval glory, partitions, war, and modern resistance has left its mark. So we are going to the next church, and this is the Cathedral of the Virgin Mary, built in 1899 to 1908 in a neo-Gothic style. Twin spires dominate the skyline. You'll spot them from almost anywhere in the city. Built during the partitions under Russian rule, so it's a symbol of Catholic resilience. The interior has beautiful stained glass and altars with Marian devotion themes. Unfortunately, there was a ceremony going on when I was there, so I didn't quite get the chance to go inside, but never mind. So you have this is the park next to the train station and just by the cathedral. It was quite noticeable because of this kind of bastion that has survived. I think it's now a public toilet, so perhaps not living up to its former glory. You also had this monument of Chopin that was particularly interesting, and it was positioned right next to a kind of, this little, amphitheatre for, maybe people to enjoy. This is one of those things you look through the things and you see old pictures. And yes, that monument there was, I think, Jan Kochanowski, who was a Polish Renaissance poet. And he was actually born near Radom. And Radom considers him as their poet. I also managed to run into this kind of street festival that was pretty cool. I was a bit low on funds, so I wasn't really purchasing anything, but never mind. This is one of the kind of bars that's particularly connected to the brewery, which made a lovely stop to grab some food and have a few beers. So we're kind of getting close to the end of my notes, but what I wanted to do with the remainder of this video is show, this is the Workers' Monument. So this is the 1976 uprising, basically, which helped to found the Solidarity movement. And I have a few more random facts that I can share before we get to the final section of the video, which will be focusing on the skansen. Okay, so what have we got? So you've got Radom was a a royal residence, hosted some of Poland's most important Sejms. We had the Nihil Novi Act, which I mentioned earlier. The coat of arms in the city is a bit unusual. It features a crowned white eagle and 3 ducks, a quirky medieval reference to local marshes. Yes, so Radom is the birthplace of Jan Kochanowski. In the 19th and 20th century, Radom became an industrial hub famous for arms. So you had the Luchnik Arms Factory. It also was important for leather and textiles. The Luchnik factory produced the famous Polish Luchnik sewing machines as well, beloved for decades. Radom is also famous for the International Air Show, which occurs every 2 years. And it's the largest of its kind in Poland, though I did hear some stories where the air show, I think one year they wouldn't let people take in their own water, and it was an incredibly hot day and they ran out of water. I'm hoping in the latest air show perhaps that has been improved. There is a street food speciality in Radom, the Radomskie pizzi, or dumplings. Bit less famous than pierogi, but loved locally. And the impressions I had from this city is I didn't really see poverty, as all the memes and such were saying. It felt like a very modern city. I think a lot of money has gone into redeveloping Radom. And the airport, even though it's joked about, I think is a bit more popularly used now. So I'm trying to say that Radom, even though it has this really bad reputation, I think has come a massive way. One thing you find in Poland is you get a lot of these stereotypes about cities. You get about Łódź and places as well, where a lot of people say, oh, these places are ugly, these places are poor. But these kind of stereotypes that they give tend to be a bit out of date. And the thing with Poland is it is developing so quickly that it is really worth seeing everywhere. This is my mission, to try and see everywhere in Poland, because every city I find has, some really nice signs to it. Even some of the places I perhaps haven't enjoyed as much as others have still had their merit. And definitely Radom is one of those places that surprised me. Given the reputation, I was expecting a lot less. But actually, it's the sort of place, if I was living there, I don't think I'd be too unhappy about it. Obviously, you don't really know what a city's like to live in until you've stayed there, but it seemed to have a nice spirit and people seem friendly. It has a few nice parks dotted around, as I'm showing here. So as much as I would like to be jokey and insulting, as a lot of the people in Warsaw are about Radom, actually, I think, it's quite a nice place to visit. And I would recommend, I'd say probably you just need a day to see it, depending on how much you want to see and what you want to do. But it's well worth it. It's really, you see a lot of culture there, a lot of history. And I'd say it definitely kind of lives up to being like the second city of Masovia. I did a lot of walking around, and I have to admit there were a lot of things that were kind of hidden away off the beaten track, which you're seeing here. So probably you won't see a lot of these monuments if you visit. This is the monument to the old ghetto. You can see there's not really any kind of old evidence of the original ghetto. But now we're going to go a bit outside of the city, and this is actually the first thing I visited when I got there, but I saved it to the end. So this is the Village Museum, or Skansen, and it's actually one of the largest in Poland, covering over 30 hectares. And, it's like an open-air ethnographic park. It was established in 1976, actually, the same year as Radom's famous workers' protest, so it's got a bit of a symbolic date to it. And what you'll find are, over 80 wooden buildings relocated from villages across the Radom region. So you get thatched cottages, barns, windmills, manor houses, chapels, workshops, and arranged into like authentic rural homesteads. And it's divided into kind of thematic areas representing Masovia's countryside life from the 18th to the early 20th century. And, you get a few events held here. You have folk festivals, harvest celebrations, craft fairs. You can see blacksmiths, weavers, potters demonstrating traditional skills. There are Easter palm making, nativity plays, folk music concerts. So there's a lot going on here. And it's not just static. You do have some traditional farm animals dotted throughout. I didn't see the horses, I don't think, but I definitely saw sheep and poultry. You have old-style orchards, vegetable gardens, and it's designed to feel like stepping into a working 19th century village. And it's definitely bigger and more immersive than many of the skansens you'll encounter. There's a strong focus on living traditions, crafts, food, music, not just the architecture. And it captures the specific identity of Masovian village culture, which shaped much of central Poland. You can see some of the animals. You're allowed to pretty much get right up to them. I don't think you can really pick them up and walk around with them, but this was impressive. So this was a private collection of, is it Pysanki? So the kind of Polish Easter eggs. I think they had a few Ukrainian ones as well, but these were all done by a single artist. And I was impressed. I haven't seen a collection of like this since I went to Czestochowa, which has a museum for these as well. And so I think this is one of the wooden churches. You've got, you don't really get to go inside so much, but you can at least look at it. And so there are a lot of really cool wooden buildings. It's a very photographic place. It's got all these different little museums. So here you have some of the old-fashioned craft work, which would have been done by the women and the children in the village. Something quite iconic. You get to walk around and see inside a lot of these old buildings. You get this really authentic look. I mean, I've been to a lot of skansens. I'm not going to lie, but this one, I don't know, it just felt a bit more interesting to walk around than a lot of the other skansens. It had more life to it. Even though it was quiet, there weren't any events going on when I was there, it did have this cool feel. Yeah, this is a map of Poland from 1939. A lot of kind of illustrations again of the kind of the local crafts that would have been present in this village. I think what Poland does very well is it preserves its culture, and I think this is something that the UK needs to learn from. I know we have a lot of museums, but the Polish reverence for culture is second to none. And I really respect the fact that they, not only respect these traditions, but they kept them alive through all of the occupations, all of the wars, all of the persecution that this country had. I mean, it's really a demonstration of the Polish spirit. I can't remember what this wooden plane was about, but it was I had to include it. It was just something a bit novel. I also encountered quite a few breweries in Radom, which was cool. I didn't realize so much beer was brewed here, actually. And we're quickly going to see one more church, which is the St. Wenceslas Church. And And this is near the old settlement, so founded in the 13th century, associated with Saint Jadwiga of Silesia and early Piast rulers. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of Radom, and I do encourage you to visit. Please like, subscribe, and do zobaczenia.